Hello my friends, let's start this video from the good news for Ukraine, and what is good for Ukraine is not good for Russia. For example, the Russian submarine Novorossiysk is under distress, so emergency situation appeared on board. I have multiple reports about this one, so actually two naval vessels of Russian Federation reportedly sustained major technical failures. There are two separate incidents, one in Mediterranean and the other one in Azov Sea region. So Russian channel VGK OGPU report that September 27th, so it was yesterday, the project 636.3 submarine Novorossiysk experienced a critical malfunction in its fuel system while operating in Mediterranean Sea. And yeah, it's not a nuclear-driven submarine, no, it's an electrical diesel submarine, the standard one, but it is, after all, an attack submarine which could be used against some of our allies, potentially, again. The technical malfunction caused the leak of the fuel. It is not good, yes, for environment, after all, but it's not an oil tanker, so the quantity of the diesel fuel, after all, is not that huge, again, compared to the big vessels. So submarine was forced to float up, it showed itself, and I'm waiting for actual images from the place, because now we have just those reports. Well, I think they're valid because many of the media sources confirmed this one, but I want to see more of the data, okay? So now the crew is in lack of the spare parts to fix this technical issue. And again, there is one more reason not to let Russia into international waters, yeah, because they may harm the environment with their stupid old boats. And the second reason, of course, they possess threat to neighbors, to NATO countries as well. By the way, in today's video, I'm going to speak about more threats coming from Russian officials. Their rhetoric is now war-oriented. And the same channel reported about the Russian missile corvette Project Buran M that also suffered some of the technical failure in Azov Sea. Well, actually, it was a collision with a civilian tanker that happened in August 2025, so the last month. It didn't happen yesterday, as in the previous case with the submarine. To be more precise, 7th of August that collision happened, and also the same month, in August, Russia lost the Navy tugboat Kapitan Ushakov. It sank down during the final outfitting in the Baltic shipyard St. Petersburg. Russia even claimed that it was the Ukrainian strike, but now we don't have the evidence of that one. So Russia every month has some of the troubles with their navy, which is overall is a good thing for Ukraine, because Russia is losing its capabilities elsewhere, on the ground, in the water, in the air. I guess by the time I'm recording the video, there is the massive Russian attack on Ukraine, mostly on Kiev, but different cities also touched, and I cannot show you all of the images coming, but it is definitely a terrible thing. Here we have the latest map from Insider UA. Again, it's the time while I'm recording this video. At this exact moment, you see that Shahids are flying towards Kiev. Many of the drones. Russia also launched cruise missiles and ballistics. They used strategic aviation. Yeah, Shahid drones are spotted in the skies, and it's one of the biggest attacks of Russian Federation on Ukraine for the last few months. This image shows just the private households out there in Borshchivka district of Kiev. Also, you can see the smoke is coming from the further place. So Kiev was hit today. Civilian infrastructure. It is not a freaking military base. Those are just the houses of civilians. Here we have the trajectory, so yellow are the drones, red are cruise missiles, and blue is ballistics. The target for them was Tarik Konstantinov military airfield of Ukraine, which is under constant attacks. Poland closed its airspace just in case. Over the eastern side of Ukraine, they also scrambled their F-16s to patrol the skies. P-8 Poseidon aircraft is performing surveillance in that area, as well as the oil tanker was lifted to refuel F-16s. So again, we see that Russia is oriented to escalate this war. By the time Ukraine targets just refineries, just military targets, Russia hits for purpose Ukrainian civilians. Also, guys, the situation with the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant is getting completely out of hand. The station is blacked out for the third consecutive day, and today it's already the fourth day. Just 18 emergency generators are driving the station with emergency power supply, which is crucially needed for it to operate. Without it, you cannot control reaction, so the scenario, as in Fukushima, is pretty much possible if station stays without electrical power. So reactors, they overheat overheat and explode. But Fukushima is a kindergarten compared to Zaporizhia nuclear power plant, which is the biggest out there in the Eastern Europe. The Guardian published a very precise report about the situation with nuclear power plant. The International Atomic Agency is also concerned about the case, and they also afraid about the possible nuclear disaster. All of the experts for now compared to Fukushima, where definitely main electrical power supply was lost. And on the screenshot you may see some of the power lines which are leading to the station located 30 kilometers west of Mariupol, and those power lines, as reported, were damaged. The power lines which are feeding the station, they're coming also from Ukrainian controlled territory, and just not long time ago Russia damaged those. If we draw a parallel with Fukushima, their station stayed 3 days without electrical supply, and then a blast happened that ruined the reactor and the reactor building itself. In Chernobyl, there was just a single reactor that exploded, and it was way smaller compared to the reactors in Zaporizhia nuclear power plant. Well, Russians report about the Ukrainian strike on a local substation. They say that it was the drone attack, but on those satellite images we see nothing there. It was, as before, just some of the more traces on the ground from the cars. That's it. It seems like Russians are doing something with the power lines themselves. And about the diesel generators, sorry, I was wrong. Not 18 generators are working, only 7 of them. Totally 18, but 7 in service. At the same time, Russia continued to report about the damage of the substation, and they are unable to fix it because of the Ukrainian strikes. But again, if we check out the satellite images, there are no strikes visible. Plus, Russians say that the station may run for 20 days more on diesel generators. They say it's kind of the reliable state, but International Atomic Agency disagrees with this. Experts say that Russians cut the power lines for purpose because they want to apply the new power lines which will cut Ukraine completely, and that new power line may allow Russians to move one more reactor of the station from its idle state and to produce electricity for occupied territories and also for Russia. But Atomic Agency says that it's very, very risky, especially during the wartime in Ukraine. But Russians, they don't understand it, and they experiment again as Soviets did with Chernobyl. Guys, the situation there is very, very risky, because if something happens to the station, all of the Europe and probably even Asia would feel it. I hope that we're not gonna witness one more Chernobyl or several times more than Chernobyl tragedy. Guys, one more step in this global escalation. Russia started to use rhetorics which it used already against Ukraine back in 2021. Yeah, right before the war had started. So Lavrov in United Nations, somehow he got his voice out there. He was really threatening NATO. He said that NATO poses threat somehow, not only to Russia and China. The alliance is seeking to encircle Eurasia militarily. But Russia declares its readiness for negotiations aimed at eliminating the root causes of the conflict in Ukraine. And I listened to that speech. He meant 2008, then Putin was proclaiming some restoration of the Soviet Empire, and 2021, the ultimatum from the Russian side for NATO to withdraw the forces from the Eastern Europe entirely. And after that, Russia started the war in Ukraine. So the root cause is not connected to Ukraine. Russia wants to restore its influence as it was in the Soviet Union, including Poland, Baltic countries, Czech Republic, Slovakia, Moldova, Romania, and many more. Also could be Finland, because there was some time ago then it was the part of the Russian Empire, so Putin may aim to that as well. Any aggression against Russia will be met with tough response, and NATO and the European Union should have no doubt about it. But we see that aggression is coming just from the Russian Federation with all of those drone attacks and violations of the airspace of the NATO countries. Europe is not doing anything of that, but Russia says, oh, those are not our drones, we have nothing to do with that, as Peskov mentioned before, yeah? Russia places certain hopes on continuing dialogue with the United States and sees the current United States administration a willingness to pursue pragmatic cooperation between the two countries. Yeah, obviously they admire Donald Trump, one more dictator out there, or an idiot who wants to become a dictator. By the way, guys, I'm gonna film the videos about United States politics, including United States politics, on my another channel. The link for it is in the video description just below. And just 5 days ago, Putin said about the possible response from Russia on escalation coming from NATO. And Russia may even use a technical military measures, материально-технические методы. Exactly the same words, letter in letter, he said about Ukraine in 2021, few months before he started his infamous so-called special military operation. So the threat is definitely a huge one, and we should take it seriously. If you think that Russia is not capable, think again. They still have a joker in the sleeves. Actually, several of the jokers. For example, one of those is the announcement of the massive mobilization in Russia. If Russia mobilizes 1 million soldiers, what can Europe do with that? Tell someone in Germany, tell someone in Spain, Portugal, or whatever country you take. Tell them to fight against the Russian army. Do you think there will be many more volunteers? Well, there could be, I think, especially in countries like Poland. But speaking about Baltics, the population is not that huge. So Russians absolutely may attack and gain control over entire Baltic countries. Cutting just 60 kilometers of Suwalki corridor, establishing their control, it might definitely take them not that much time. Again, in case of the massive mobilization in Russia. So they need to announce it at first and then to attack. Or to provoke with the small attacks and after it announce the massive mobilization and in a few months gain the control. There could be different variants, but I'm sure that they're on the table. I know that I sound pessimistic, but I know Russian, I monitor Russian news, I follow Russian military bloggers, and they all say about this stuff, that there is gonna be a big war. And the Russian officials, they say absolutely the same stuff what they said before in 2021, guys. This is damn serious. Yeah, before I was like, okay, Russia is busy in Ukraine, they cannot attack Western countries, NATO countries, but after all, Russia is a huge country with enormous population compared to some of the European countries, so they may easily mobilize 1 million men, give them Kalashnikovs, and they will go just forward, and you cannot stop them. Europe, you will not be able to stop them in the current state you have. Russians have FPV drones, and they still produce their military equipment, tanks, BMPs, everything of that. You see, it's not been used on the front lines in Ukraine recently. They attack mostly with infantry forces. Just sometimes we see the Russian tanks and BMPs burning because it's kind of stupid to use them on the front lines because Ukraine reached this level of the drone protection, so every vehicle out there on the front lines is pretty much an easy target. But Europe is not ready for this modern type of the war. In Europe, there is no even a single drone unit capable to fight in that environment. Russia knows that. Putin knows that, and also Putin knows that it looks like United States of America, they don't really care on what is happening out there. United States will not deploy its forces to Europe. For me, it is vivid 100%. Trump might help Europe with military support. He could apply sanctions on Russia, but more than that, no, absolutely. So Putin has this 3 years window to act with military action on NATO. He's sure that Trump will not put his forces there. And somehow I'm sure myself, judging on the weak reaction coming from Donald Trump, that he was asked about the Russian Air Force violation of the NATO airspace and also Russian drone attacks. So I see the situation, I analyze it, and I have this outcome, which is not that optimistic. And I think personally that this summer of this year was probably the last peaceful one for some of the countries in Europe. I hope I'm wrong. I'm just this crazy guy with a microphone, YouTube channel, whatsoever. I'm not like expert in everything. I don't have lots of the data, but I want to warn you because I have some of the logic, you know. I'm following this war for already extensive period of time, and I understand some of the things. I just hope that I'm not right. I hope that everything will be peaceful for NATO countries at least. And I hope that Ukraine will have enough support, will continue to receive it. And you know, I follow some of the Russian-speaking channels, like for example Michael Naki. He's a great guy. He collects the funds for Ukrainian army, where he also says reference to the Russian military bloggers and the signals coming that the mobilization is inevitable. That bloggers say it could happen this year, so this channel is kind of big, 2 million subscribers. They have very detailed analytics. I follow them all the time. The Russian oppositioner Maxim Katz, you may have different attitude towards him, but nevertheless he is against Putin's regime. And today he posted the video mobilization in Russia. Is it inevitable? So everyone is speaking about mobilization in Russia because simply it is not possible to continue the war with the current Russian losses without mobilization. It's not possible. There are less and less Russian volunteers available for them to hire to the Russian army for millions of rubles. They're in lack of those, especially then we see that Russia is not using lots of the vehicles on the front lines, but mostly infantry. And Putin already did it once in 2022. He announced the mobilization, but now he scrutinized everything more precisely. I mean, the Russian mobilization system and army was reformed, and no one is capable to escape Russia any longer if he is in the list to be mobilized. Just needs a signal, and this trap will be closed for many of the Russians, and they will be conscripted to the Russian army right away. So the last time they hired, as they say, 300,000 soldiers, so why not to hire 1 million at least this time? Because, you know, Russia needs those. I think that this variant is pretty much possible. I would say even inevitable, because Russian society is inactive. They don't care about their own losses. 1 million soldiers were wasted already in this war without any sustainable territorial gains. No any big city of Ukraine except Mariupol was occupied for 3.5 years. But Russians are not even protesting. Putin knows that. Putin sees everything, and Putin has his own plan. His plan is not peace or ceasefire. No, he just dreams about escalation and restoration of his ex-Soviet or Russian empire. And about the Russian economy, yes, it is in stagnation, but it is not even close to the worst periods of the Soviet Union stagflation. Plus, Russia has still reliable partners like China, India, and many others who continue to cooperate with Russia, sadly maintaining the Russian economy. So my prediction that still Russia is capable to afford this war for extensive period of time, for many years ahead. Russian economy will not collapse just like that in 2026 and in 2027. No. It's a big country with a huge resource. Unfortunately, it continues its war against Ukraine. But Ukraine, in general, is very capable. I'm very surprised that Ukraine handles it for 3.5 years of the war. Soon it's gonna be 4 years of the war. Remember the First World War. For the 4 years, empires collapsed. Russian Empire, Austro-Hungarian Empire, Ottoman Empire. Germany lost the war without the war being on their own territory. So Ukrainian society handles this long-term war, I would say, quite well, very well. Still, Ukrainians have the spirit to resist, and Putin will not be able to occupy Ukraine because the Ukrainian army, I would say, is the most capable out there in Europe. Saying that, my friends, I call you to support me on Patreon or on membership of this YouTube channel. Thank you so much for maintaining my motivation to continue filming videos. And I hope that the next video of mine will be about only positive news. My friends, I wish you all a peaceful sky wherever you are, and have a great time.